And now we will once again move into the world of Counter-Strike Global Offensive, where the most respected type of weapon is knives. It's not easy to make frags with them, and at the same time knives with unique colorings cost tens of thousands of rubles. Well, no matter what model you have in your hands, in CS it has purely cosmetic effect and you won't feel any difference in the game. Although in reality, knives can vary greatly from one another, and each of them possesses its own unique purpose and characteristics. And in this issue I will again talk about the most interesting knives from CS with an unusual history. If we talk about one of the most brutal looking knives in CS, then of course many will think of the M9 bayonet, or in the Russian version, the bayonet. It looks massive and dangerous weapon, and it seems that this is exactly what you want to go into battle with. The M9 knife was invented over 30 years ago for the needs of the American Army, but like many military devices, such a knife was created not only to cut enemies with it, and as a versatile tool. For instance, a small hole on the blade is not made for beauty at all. With its assistance, the knife M9 joined his legs and transformed into extremely convenient pliers that are used for cutting wires or cables. In field conditions, a massive knife can also help to chop down a small tree or saw off branches. However, first and foremost, the M9 was used as a bayonet. The round hole in the handle is designed to secure the knife to the rifle bolt, similar to the M16 or AR-15. And then you can not only shoot but also defend yourself in close combat. The rifle has a decent weight. As a result, a bayonet-armed weapon can cause significant harm to the enemy. However, bayonets are used less often in modern times, and many armies worldwide do not even train to utilize them. This is because now it is better to spend time on more important aspects and current tasks when training soldiers. But during the times of the First and Second World Wars, bayonets were used very actively, and they were often 2 to 3 times longer than the M9 knife. The point here is that at the beginning of the 20th century, fighters most often ran with rifles that had a small magazine and needed to be reloaded after each shot. Because of this, the rate of fire was relatively low, and if the enemy was close, it was more reasonable to use bayonets. Plus, the very nature of the war format was such that combat often took place in trenches, so close combat clashes frequently occurred there. But nowadays, when every soldier has a machine gun with a bunch of bullets, hand-to-hand combat is usually not necessary. That is why bayonets are not used so often now, and they have somewhat gone out of fashion. As for the Kaya, the use of the M9 knife in combat is quite permissible, and such a knife could indeed be in the arsenal of counter-terrorists or terrorists. And another intriguing knife for this release is known as Ursus knife. Perhaps he does not have such a menacing appearance, but he possesses his own fascinating and unique story. This knife has a shape that resembles a tanto. It first appeared in Japan as far back as 6 or 7 centuries ago. Samurai of that time carried 2 swords with them, a full-sized katana and a noticeably shorter tanto, which was used as a secondary weapon. However, the tango was still long enough and its more modern adaptation became much more prevalent. In short, for convenient portability, this knife is popular among special forces, including the US Army, where its variant, Recontanto, is utilized. This knife is suitable for many purposes. It can chop, cut, and even puncture metal sheets. At the same time, it is also incredibly sharp and durable. He is even capable of supporting the weight of a person if a knife is stuck in the wall and climbing somewhere with its help. And it is evident that if a knife is capable of handling both wood and metal, then naturally the flesh is cut under its influence as though nothing had occurred. In battle, this versatile knife becomes a formidable weapon, capable of withstanding everything, even a bulletproof vest. It is not surprising that many professional fighters around the world choose exactly this knife, and it is a model of quality and reliability among all modern combat knives. Therefore, if someone from the counters or terrorists took such a knife for a mission, then he clearly made the right choice. Another interesting type of knives from CS is shadow daggers, which at first glance rather resemble some knuckles, and you may get the impression that they don't look that dangerous. However, in fact, we have a very serious weapon in front of us, which has been actively used for not just 100 years. One of the first versions of such daggers appeared in India, and they were called Katar. He was significantly longer than what we see in CS. The Katars served as an extension of the fighter's hand, and the technique of fighting with Katars was aimed at piercing the enemy completely. For our hand, such a position is much more natural than when you try to silence someone with a dagger. Thus, the penetrating properties of the katana were superior to any sword, and by delivering a strong blow, it was possible to easily penetrate armor or chainmail. However, more modern versions of striking daggers have become much smaller, as there was simply no need for a huge blade. The advantage of such a weapon is that you don't need any special training. The movements here are exactly the same as with a regular hand strike. Also, thanks to its T-shape and small size, the knife turns out to be quite compact, and it is very convenient to carry it discreetly on the belt or hide it in a boot. Therefore, combat daggers were actively used during the First and Second World Wars. In production, they were simple and inexpensive, so even ordinary people often carried them as self-defense weapons. Even with a weak strike, such a knife easily penetrates through clothing and flesh, and defending against him in close combat will be very difficult because you can attack him from completely different directions, delivering straight side or uppercuts. Despite its small blade, it can inflict very serious wounds. Could anyone from the terrorists or counter-terrorists choose such close combat weapons? Very likely.